Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Jacqueline. Jacqueline, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we dive into the subject, which I'm really fascinated about, purposely we were talking before the episode a little bit about the subject. I'm like, wait, we can't go too far because this has got to be recorded. This is too good. But before we dive in, maybe if you could share a little bit about yourself, what do you love about marketing, a little bit about your career, kind of set the stage, and we'll dive right in.
Yeah. So I love everything about marketing. I'll start there. As I mentioned earlier, I've worked in marketing, I joke, since the beginning of digital marketing, basically. And I've had the opportunity to work in basically every facet of marketing. And so I'm really, really passionate about just multi-funnel journeys and just creating campaigns and really advocating for authenticity and reaching people with genuine content.
I love it. And we could take that conversation just from that introduction in a million different directions, but we're going to focus today particularly on middle of the funnel content. When we look at content marketing, a lot of times we focus on, great, this is the brand level or awareness level content. And then the really bottom of the funnel, this is what sales is going to send after a demo. But sometimes we kind of get lost on how do we operate in the middle of the funnel? How do we take someone from the top and go to the middle? What does the middle do? How do we kind of switch things around? So we're going to kind of focus that. So Jacqueline, first looking at it, when you've got awareness and you're trying to get someone to start to engage with the middle of the funnel, what are some of the steps you take to really get people to transition from those two different stages in the buyer's journey?
So I think just top of mind, middle of funnel, I think people get kind of freaked out by it because the first step is usually talking to other people outside of marketing. Really the top of funnel is fun. It's social. It's, lighthearted content to get people aware of your brand. And that next step is, how do we qualify the right people and what questions should we be asking and how can I help to answer them with content? So I usually will go to the sales team and I'll ask them, what questions are you guys asking over and over and over again? And then how can we answer them with content? And so from there, usually we can create something that, takes that step out for them. I think usually the goal is to shorten the buyer's journey. So I don't know if I just answered your question, but
I love it. No, that makes perfect sense. Starting with the questions, starting with the things that people actually care about and things of that nature. What is the purpose of middle of the funnel, right? Like you talked about, it's like that awkward part of dating where it's like you actually start asking someone out and you got to commit time and things like that. What's the point? How do you consider building middle of the funnel content?
Yeah, I think middle funnel content is the worst part of dating. And it's the hardest part of marketing because it is that qualification, right? And it is having to ask those questions and then having to look at the answers and make an educated decision as to what's next. And just like dating, sometimes that decision can be that this isn't a good fit. And sometimes people don't want to see that, admit that, right? Like a sales team will always tell you, just send me all the leads all day. But really for me, a great piece of mid-funnel content and really the goal is to qualify or disqualify someone. So, an example would be 10 reasons why X, Y, and Z is not a good fit or is a good fit for you, right? Or 10 things you should consider about this. And not keeping it all positive, not keeping it all product focused or salesy. It's really that time where you're able to provide information that allows people to say, okay, maybe this isn't a good fit for me. I think pricing is always really good mid-funnel content. If you have a pricing page on your website, it's usually going to be the most trafficked page. And I guarantee you, if you add a pricing page to your site, you'll have more qualified inbound leads. You might have less inbound leads, but the ones that you do get will be more likely to convert because they will already be aware of what that cost is up front and they're willing to spend it. So I think mid-funnel content is just all about, creating the warmest possible lead for that end of the sales cycle.
I love that. This is a point like I was so fascinated in the discussion beforehand that really gets me excited. And I had never thought about it before, but half of the reason you have middle of the funnel content is really to eliminate potential crappy buyers, people that are just going to waste time. And so often we are desperate for those leads, but it takes a really disciplined marketer to say, this is more than anything, this is a good way to funnel people out that really shouldn't be a part of the thing. I'd rather have a website visitor be like, oh yeah, this isn't for me, than have a sales rep have to do that filtering, because then your relationship grows. Then it comes to a marketer like yourself that's really aligned with revenue to say, hey, my goal is revenue. It's not lead generation. My goal is to help this business hit its sales target. And I think that that's really, really powerful. So when you told this story about sending this piece of content, the 10 things, that consider if you're going to buy, and half of them are why you shouldn't buy, you had talked about doing that after like a webinar. So do you typically kind of introduce middle of the funnel content right after awareness funnel content? How do you start to like seed that out initially?
I think it's all about the buyer's journey and how long it usually takes people to convert. If you're selling something expensive and it's going to take a year or a year and a half for someone to convert, I'll want to run paid ads, top of funnel newsletters, just that blog content kind of stuff for like 6 months. But then, something like a webinar, which is, I'd consider a mid-funnel piece of content, I think gives you a really good opportunity to still be educational with content, but then to convert people. So then I would introduce that. And that is kind of like a hand raise opportunity for those prospects. So then you still have those people that maybe are going to be that year and a half buyer, but then you just took those other people and those are now in the mid-funnel. And then from there, I would send them that more 10 reasons why content, like allowing them almost to move themselves to the next stage, I think is key. So yeah, because you're never going to know exactly when they're ready unless you're looking at that data and giving them opportunities to tell you when they're ready based on the data. So like, what have they engaged with? How many pieces of content have they engaged with? Maybe lead scoring is good there. But yeah, so that's kind of how I think it's all about engagement, time, activity.
So it sounds like, you mentioned lead scoring. This, you got to the question before I even got there. So when you're giving them opportunities to move to the middle of the funnel, are you typically attaching those to awareness kinds of content, or are you typically waiting for a score? Is it kind of a combination? How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. I'd say, when I map out campaigns or something like that, usually we'll map out how long they're going to run for. And so at a certain point in that campaign, I'll say, okay, let's take everyone who is engaged at a certain level and introduce them to this. So everyone who's opened an email and clicked on the landing page and, have like a good retargeting audience. I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not asking too early. I think a lot of times we introduce the middle of the funnel a little eagerly just to hit numbers, but it sounds like you're waiting for the defined moment. Okay, we've engaged enough that, asking this person on a first date would not be a big deal. Like they would see this coming.
Right. Yeah. And I think lead scoring can help with that a lot as long as you're updating your lead scoring based on your content program. I think sometimes that doesn't always happen, but in a perfect world and with an engaged sales team, then yeah, you should be able to have a lead score that's going to move someone really from MQL, I guess it'd be SQL, and then start sending them that mid-funnel content.
Love it. We were talking beforehand as well. It feels like as time goes on, the middle of the funnel is getting longer. When you look at middle of the funnel content, how far down in the sales cycle do you take it? Like, obviously it's not replacing your sales reps, but how close to the buy do you kind of take this content before some of them are hand raisers and things like that?
Yeah, I'll send content alongside like the end of the buyer's journey. Like if someone submits a demo, like I'm going to send them a marketing email at the exact same time that's going to nurture them at the exact same time that a sales team is going to pick up the phone call. Because I think there's always something that we can do with content to help people even just get that signature faster, right? And I think, the reason why the mid-funnel has become so much longer is because people want to self-educate. And so I think giving them those opportunities just down to the very, very end is awesome.
I love that. When you're looking at a full content marketing program, when you look at percentages of amount of content created at the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, do you have like a breakdown that you would recommend that people consider, or is it needs based, or purely like what the database has? Do you typically start at the top? Do you start at the bottom? If you're brand new at this, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I'm all about the data. I mean, I think, you're going to ask any sales team and they're going to be like, we want to generate more leads. So however you do that, I think sometimes it does make sense, that low hanging fruit concept, like how can we go in there and maybe you see that the sales team does have a pipeline that is updated, amazing. And they have a ton of people that are somehow just like lingering, right? So maybe we start with some like bottom of funnel campaigns or something there. Or, if it's a brand new company and they don't have anything, then I would totally start with top of funnel content and start with awareness. And then from there, creating what you need to create as those people are moving along in the journey. I'd really start it though, based on where people are stuck, as far as like where prospects are stuck.
I like that. Yeah. The needs kind of outweigh all the other stuff, not the, 20% should be spent here and 30 here. It's, we got a whole pipeline that we need to push. Yeah.
Like we just, like at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is closing deals. So how can, and especially if you're a new marketer on a team, right? Like how can I make the most impact with like the easiest stuff? So usually that's where.
Yeah. I think it brings up an interesting definition. I talked to someone like really starting out their career in marketing, and I hate to break it to the marketers of the world that are just entering the space, but like marketing is just sales. You just happen to be up a little higher in the funnel. Like that's the only difference between you and sales. And the sooner you figure that out and accept it, the better off you'll be.
So true. I had a really sad point in my career where I had to realize this. But everything's been on the up and up since then, truly. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we are sales, and the best marketers who can align with that that's where all the success lies. And honestly, though, I found that being able to lean into that and being able to quantify what you're doing with that crazy complex data is so, so helpful. And it really does empower everything else you do from a creative standpoint too.
I love that. Yeah. So obviously you have a great relationship with sales. How have you leaned into that to help it, direct, besides looking at the data and finding the gaps? How have you built the relationship with sales as a marketer? How do you let it drive what content you're creating? How do you kind of use that as a superpower to really optimize the middle of the funnel?
I think I start usually just by asking how I can help. I've mentioned data a million times, but I think, going into HubSpot, into Salesforce, and just like looking at the activity and seeing what's happening and really just listening to the sales team as far as what they want. And then maybe like dazzling them with capabilities. I think sometimes they're so overwhelmed and they don't understand what having an arsenal of like a great writer and some great automation tools can do for you. And then just, listening to them. I think at first, that relationship between sales and marketing is always kind of fraught. But the more that you can start to quantify those two things and show how they work together, one area that comes to mind for sure is like events. I think events are always a really good, easy place to showcase like how marketing and sales can work together and really driving traffic. That's like, they can't ignore that,
I love that. Well, as promised, these episodes go by super fast, and I have a lot to think about the middle of the content funnel. There's so much middle of the funnel content. I don't know why I get that backwards, but it's been one of those days. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. This is super impactful. I love the perspective. I love how you're looking at the data. I love how you understand the needs of the sales team. So this has been awesome. If anyone wants to continue the conversation and connect with you online, what's the best way for them to reach out and touch base?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jacqueline Friedman, Freedman. I'm always available on there yelling about something on my platform. So feel free to check it out.
I love it. I love it. And we'll link to your profile in the show notes as well, so it's easy for people to find you. But thanks again for the time. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.